floor for you to ask questions also. In spite of my own language limitations, please feel free to ask questions in the language that you're most comfortable in, and my colleagues Sophie and Venus will be there to support and translate. So I'll just introduce our panel. We have Korab Krajnici from our Forum ZFD program in Kosovo, which is part of our regional Western Balkans program. Korab is a project manager there. He's experienced in dealing with the past and transitional justice, with an emphasis on memory and memorialization. He's engaged in research on collective memory through oral histories of ordinary people and wartime survivors, and through public spaces and memorials. Ratanak Lee from Cambodia. Ratanak is a peace program manager with Women Peacemakers, WPM, in Cambodia. Having studied psychology and also applied conflict transformation studies, in his professional experience he has mainly worked concentrating on dealing with the past, addressing historical and interethnic conflict, peace building, and promoting a culture of non-violence in addressing conflict in diverse societies. And last but not least, Susan Rizal. She's the CEO of the peace building organization Nagarik Awaz in Nepal. Susan is a peace practitioner based in Kathmandu in Nepal. Having worked previously for the same organization that she is now the CEO of, she had the experience of listening to many stories of hardship and suffering of the conflict-affected communities, and this made her want to continue her work in peace and commitment, and has been her dedication ever since then. She's a long-time peace practitioner and advocate who believes that every member of the community has the right to live a peaceful life with social justice and dignity. Okay, so maybe a quick round of applause for our panelists. And I'll hand over to our first speaker, Korab from Kosovo.
Hello everyone. As introduced, my name is Korab Krajnici. I come from Kosovo. Currently involved in Forum ZFD program in Kosovo, mainly responsible on projects concerning dealing with the past more broadly, but then specifically more deeply into transitional justice and memorialization work. We do that by employing different methods, approaches, and mediums as a way to contribute to a, to a more diverse culture of memory and memorialization in Kosovo, but also as a way of addressing the difficult past. I am very happy to be here today with everybody. I see a lot of experienced people here, so it gives me a lot of responsibility right now on how do I want to approach the presentation on the perspectives of transitional justice in Kosovo and the region. I would maybe just start with a short contextual description of where we are coming from, what the conflict is. Kosovo is a small region in Western Balkans, or in southeastern Europe. It is comprised of 2 million people approximately, with majority of Albanians and with a second majority ethnic background of Serbians, Turkish, Bosniaks, Torbeshi, Romani, Ashkali, Egyptians, even a small community of Croatians who are still living in Kosovo. Kosovo, during the socialist period, used to be, with the constitution of 1974, used to be an autonomous province of Yugoslavia, which lasted up until 1989 with the introduction of Slobodan Milosevic in the political scene of Yugoslavia. In 1989, the autonomy of Kosovo constitution was revoked, and this is the point in which technically we assume that it becomes a turning point of conflict and what was about to happen generally during the 90s. In the beginning of 90s, we had a sense of apartheid, where Albanian majority was technically excluded from political life, not really taking part in public institutions, but also in public factories. This, in a way, imposed a sort of life in which ethnic groups were organized in parallel structures and in parallel life. And this continued up until 1997, 1999, when the war, when the violence started taking place in Kosovo, with having Kosovo Liberation Army, guerrilla structure on one side, and Yugoslav army and Serbian paramilitary groups on the other side. Later on, we had the intervention of NATO troops, who marked also the ending of violent conflict in Kosovo. This produced a total of around 13,000 casualties, civilians, but also armed groups, including here collateral damage of people who were actually spending time in Kosovo. And out of this, we had around 6,000 people declared as missing, with around 20,000 cases of women survivors of sexual violence, with political prisoners, and with grave destruction of material aspects such as cultural heritage, buildings, and so on and so forth. Immediately after the war, we have had this administered sort of government that was monitored by UNMIK. The mandate of UNMIK lasted from 1999 to 2008, which was then followed by ULEX administration. I'm mentioning this because these institutions, they play a crucial role in transitional justice mechanisms, with having also judiciary mandate in persecuting war crimes and war criminals. Another aspect to mention on the infrastructure of transitional justice in Kosovo is also the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, in which Milosevic was also tried, and additional mechanisms are comprised of Kosovo Specialist Chambers, which is a recent institutions. Then we have truth-seeking mechanisms in which Kosovo was also part, which is RECOM, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which is an initiative which started by the president of Kosovo, which does not really make it a very legitimate sort of body, because the president was also coming from the guerrilla troops. We had a very unsuccessful attempt a couple of years back with the establishment of ministerial working group on transitional justice, who was mandated to producing a national strategy on transitional justice, but due to technical aspects, due to lack of motivation and leadership, it ceased to exist. And recently we have the working group on national transitional strategy, which brings together representatives from academia, civil society, institutions, and so on and so forth, who are working together into drafting the strategy, taking into the account also the knowledge that was coming up with the previous initiatives. So those are mechanisms that are spanning in between international tribunals, international organizations with judicial mandate, truth-seeking mechanisms, and local institutions. They are mostly committed into covering these four pillars that were earlier mentioned of dealing with the past and transitional justice. That is right to know and right to reparation on one side, and also right to justice and right to non-recurrence. And if we're looking at this structure, that on first two, we have civil society mostly responsible into contributing to, because it is a more victim-approached sort of victim-centered approach, and it enables this restorative approach to justice, knowing that civil society does not have any normative mandate. For that reason, they are called to contribute on that level. And then we have right to justice and right to non-recurrence, which are mandated more for state institutions with normative or judicial mandate, who are focused on working on the level of perpetrators and on this retributive approach to justice. Now, if we dive deeper into this and focusing on right to know, in Kosovo there were attempts to establishing truth commissions, mostly in a very decentralized way, where civil society organized in different parts were involved in truth-telling and documenting of war and traumatic experiences. History textbooks, as Slaven mentioned the other day, are becoming more and more problematic because they are quite antagonistic, and they are presenting the past in a very antagonistic and distorted way. And when it comes to the issue of missing persons, there are initiatives and civil society organizations who are actually working on. And we can call this also a type of successful process taking place in Kosovo, because if you compare it to other countries, around 70% of missing persons cases have been resolved, but civil society is still keeping somehow active and trying to bring more pressure to both governments in Pristina and in Belgrade to cooperate more in solving the case of missing persons. Rehabilitation or compensation, which can be material and symbolic, as mentioned before, it is taking place in a very unsatisfactory way. Ideally, the monetary compensation would have been that, for example, if war criminals or Serbia is responsible for certain crimes, then it would be ideal that it is coming from that side. But in Kosovo, we have a different picture where the government is working closely with victim groups, with survivors, with families of missing persons, with war veterans, where they are receiving some sort of symbolic reparation. I just maybe would want to conclude this with the general narrative that is predominantly established in Kosovo and in region now. In Kosovo, you can see this in history textbooks, but also in the political discourse, that the war and the past is used in a twofold way. One way would be that of the victimhood, where society have suffered a lot, and this can be utilized in certain political ways. And the other one would be that of a glorifying way, that we have fought, and we seek for political legitimacy through this legacy. With the war in Ukraine, there is increase also of nationalism and extremist groups who are becoming more and more antagonistic towards other ethnic groups. But we also have a sort of denial towards the war crimes, and this is becoming more visible, especially with the establishment of specialist court and having 4 political leaders in The Hague being tried for the war crimes.
I'm Ratana from Cambodia, from Women Peacemaker. So I'm a man working for Women Peacemaker, but actually just few, many other female staff. We meet in a peace program because we have 2 programs in Women Peacemaker organization, so peace program and gender program. So I'm managing a peace program, so it's work in general, not only focus on gender. So I'm honored here to share the experience in Cambodia dealing with the past, so and our efforts in working, addressing the past and finding justice for the survivors. So yes, maybe I'm not having a good way to introducing the country, but just briefly about the context of the conflict, the past conflict. When we talk about past conflict in Cambodia, we refer to the period between 1975 to 1979, where the period of when Cambodian people normally call the genocide regime, or the dark regime, or even they call the 3 years, 8 months and 20 days. That's the period of the regime specifically. And yes, before that, some political influence regionally and internationally that served to pave the way for a group of communist parties come to power and occupy the country fully in 1975, and then immediate after controlling the country, the last defensive point was in Phnom Penh city. The previous regime was defeated by the Khmer Rouge regime. I haven't mentioned about the name of these political groups that occupy the country within that period. It's the Khmer Rouge, we call Khmer Rouge regime, or the Democratic Kampuchea regime, they call themselves officially at that time. So immediately after occupying the city, they evacuate all the people at the town areas to rural areas, warning that soon the American planes will bomb the city or the town areas, so forcing all the people from the town area going to the rural areas. And in the rural areas, people are forced to work collectively and concentrating on the farm, rice field, building canals and dams. So within that period, forced labor and eating less. Next, yes. So executions happen to those who have high education. You wear glasses, or you can speak foreign languages, would be killed, executed during that time. And those who have position in the previous regime, or you are the relatives of the previous regime, will be identified and killed, executed. And those who act against the rule of the Angkar, the regime called themselves Angkar, and people never know who is controlling the country. They only heard the word Angkar. Angkar told them to do this, tell them not to do this, so just follow, no question at all. And the atrocities happen during the periods: less eat, less rest, sleep little, eat little, but work a lot, work hard, overwork. And tortures happen nationwide, countrywide, diseases, no proper medication, and separation, no family relationships, no parents, no children, all comrades, all are comrades. And losses of family members. So in total, within that period of time, 1.5 million to 3 million are estimated to be killed or died during that time. So, after the collapse of the regime in 1979, some process of normalization, I think this morning some speakers share comprehensive knowledge or process about the normalization process, but for me, I would focus more on the transitional justice work, the efforts in bringing justice for people, because unless all the process, all normalized process in place, setting and be ready for the work, the further work in bringing justice for all the survivors in the country. So roughly 2 measures have been put in the effort in bringing justice for the survivors: judicial and non-judicial measure. Next. So yes, until 1998 or 99 that the end of political violence or political conflicts with armed groups. So after that, a few years later, if counting from the collapse of the regime, it's over 20 years that we are ready to go further for the transitional justice. So in 2001, our government, under the collaboration with the United Nations, have some agreement in establishing the hybrid court. It is combining between national, international lawyers, judge, prosecutors, so using the law, international law and national law in processing this tribunal we call the Extraordinary Chamber in the Court of Cambodia, ECCC or ECCC, or just the Khmer Rouge Tribunal. So this court, people, the survivor, because it is established in Cambodia, so the survivor around the country can participate on the process, joining hearings, certain hearings, and also it is a platform for people the survivor to also apply as the civil parties. So as a civil party, they can join on the process to testify or provide testimony in certain cases. And also they also can they are entitled to participate in having voice for their reparation after each cases have been tried. Next, yes, this is one of the civil party during a hearing, and also the court play a role as the platform for learning for next generation, the young generation, so students can access to join the hearings, join some hearings, and also to learn and to reflect about the past, what happened in the past, and also discussing their role in the future. So that is a platform for learning, history learning for next generation as well, young generation. And for the court, the reparation that can be provided is symbolic, collective, and psychological. That is something I will share at the end of my presentations. Some limitation or some challenges regarding the reparation itself. So this is one example of a reparation located in Phnom Penh, inside the one of a crime site, Tuol Sleng Museum. Tuol Sleng Museum is the word, but they call a genocide museum, where people were detained and interrogated to identify if they are part of foreign spies or identified to be enemies connecting with the other country. So to that, in these areas, the detention happened, torture, very cruel torture happened. So one stupa is one example of a collective symbolic reparation for the survivor before the court. And just another example of testimonial therapy. This one organization provide this very specific and good homegrown, like in Cambodia, using traditional and religious ritual with the process of healing traumatized emotion of the survivor and the civil parties in the ECCC, the court, the Khmer Rouge Tribunal, and some way of helping the survivor to express, to tell the story, tell the suffering, and specifically this art, Pgasla dance. Pgasla refer to marriage in Cambodia. So those who were forced marriage during the Khmer Rouge regime, later after the Khmer Rouge regime, they suffer from the collective marriage because it's not traditionally recognized, and their children also even suffer from that setting of marriage in the past because it is not traditionally recognized, and then general people have some way of discrimination the kids of those parents who are not recognized the marriage traditionally. Yes, this is part of the work that from the state administration that they keep the crime site. It is part of the keeping evidence of the past, remembrance. So this is inside the genocide museum that I just mentioned, and some torture way inside there. This is the small room that they detain prisoners, next, and some material for torture to interrogate. Sometimes people not have to confess, even though they are not related to enemy or things, but they just confess because of so harsh torture. And this is Chương Ái genocide genocidal center. It is about 20 kilometers from the genocide museum. So in the genocide museum is the place to detain to the prisoner, to question, and then when they got all the answers and identified as the enemy or related to any foreign spy, they were transferred to this place we call genocidal center, where mass executions happen. Many thousand, 100,000 people are killed at that place. Next, you can see this is just a small amount of just one angle that we can see the skull, but it's different, many layers of the self putting the skull. It's just another. It's time, right? Just move. This is the same. Just some activity of a non-governmental organization in responding to the local justice, very local justice in learning history, promoting learning about history to next generations through role play or different way of telling the truth and intergenerational dialogues. Yes, next. And sometimes have the dialogues between victim and former Khmer Rouge, the former cadres who's listening. We have young generation go to do research in community to hear the story from the communities and reflect to their role, and then what can be done to avoid this kind of conflict happen again in the past. And this is just roughly the 4 components that all the work, all NGOs, the government, international organizations, and legal or social institutions contribute all together. We can come with these 4 components: remembrance, recognitions, recognize the suffering, the experience, and no recurrence, and reconciliation, build the connection. So roughly it's no clear cut between all these component because some work can be overlapped, contributing to different components.
In Nepal, in 1990, we restored multi-party democracy. But we Nepali people and also the political leaders, we were not able to uphold the outcome of the people's movement first. That is how we restored multi-party democracy. Because during that period also the inequality was there, the gender hierarchy was there, the power hierarchy was there, the caste discrimination, the class discrimination, still that was exist there. People aspire that after restoring the multi-party democracy, that kind of notion will not be there, but that was there. That is how the then Maoist party presented 40 points for the socio-economic and political transformation of the country, and also to announce Nepal as a republican country. It was during 1995. But our government didn't listen to these demands. And they just initiated the operation called Kilo Seratu to stop the actions of the Maoist party. That is how they went into the jungle, and within the 10 years of span of this period, from 1996 to 2006, almost 17,700 people were killed, because Nepal is a very small country, and looking at the population, it is very high for us. And also 78,708 people were disappeared, and also 4,052 people were displaced, and also 9,000 women are being widowed. But there is no data. How many women faced conflict-related sexual violence? But there are many cases of the conflict-related sexual violence happened in Nepal. So, and again in 2005, again the People's Movement Second was happened after the king took over the country, and also banning the political parties. That is how the Maoist party and the 7-party alliances came together, and they have a peace agreement together with the state during 2006, and that is how we enter into the state of the post-conflict period. In our comprehensive peace accord, it was mentioned that after having the peace agreement within the 6 months, the transitional justice mechanisms will be formulated within 6 months of the comprehensive peace accord, but it didn't happen. And it also talked about the social and political transformation of the country in the article number 3, and also it talked about the investigation processes of the past gross human rights violation in article 7, but it didn't happen. Only after 8 years of the comprehensive peace accord, our government formulated the transitional justice mechanisms under the Act Truth and Reconciliation Act. It was in 2014, but the transitional justice mechanisms was formulated in 2015 only. There were 2 transitional justice mechanisms was formulated in Nepal. One is Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and another is Commission on Investigation of the Disappearance Commissions. But it is very much controversial commission, because it was a political appointment. The victims were not consulted. So after the formulation of the commission, the victim communities said that they don't want to engage with the transitional justice mechanisms, and also the organization also said that we don't want to engage with the transitional justice mechanisms. But later on, the victims community said that they want to engage with the transitional justice mechanisms. That is how the process of the application, collecting of the applications of the the human rights violation, it was initiated in 2015, but only collecting almost from 2 commissions, Truth and Reconciliation on the Investigation of the Disappearance Commission, only collecting 67,000 cases. Nothing has been done yet. No cases of the reparation issue, no cases of the investigation. There is no single case is there where this commission has recommended for the reparations or something like that. There is no guidelines for the reparation. So there are a lot of things. The justice is very far away still. And if I have to talk about the gender issues, our government also formulated interim compensation policy during 2009, and they provided almost $8,000 as a part of interim compensation to the victim communities whose family were killed or they were disappeared. But there is no such kind of compensation was provided to the women who face conflict-related sexual violence, because they were not even categorized as the conflict victim in the interim compensation policies. That is how they feel betrayed, they feel marginalized, and they feel excluded. And that is how also our peace process failed to mainstream gender aspects within our transitional justice process, and also into the interim compensation policies also. this is the case, the context is there, and now also the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is there. Also the Commission on Investigation of Disappearance Commission is there. The tenure of the commissioner has been already extended for 4 times, but nothing has been done, and now there is no commissions in our transitional justice process. Only the administrative staffs are there, they are getting the salaries, nothing has been done in our Nepal, and we are just aspiring that, especially I work with the conflict affected women who face conflict related sexual violence and others who lost their husbands and whose husband relatives are disappeared. So we just actually civil society organizations are making the agenda of transitional justice alive, and also the victim communities are also being empowered, and that is how they are also making alive the transitional justice mechanisms now. And the government has also created these transitional justice mechanisms to show the international communities that okay, now there is the transitional justice mechanism in Nepal, so that they cannot enter into Nepal. That is the case. And I'll talk about my work afterwards, but this is the context of Nepal in terms of the transitional justice.